Hello. Are you ready to talk boundaries with me today? I can't wait to talk to you about this because usually lawyers are doing boundaries all wrong. I did boundaries all wrong for years, and it really caused a lot of pain, a lot of frustration because I just didn't know how to set a proper boundary. So that's going to change today. If you're feeling resentment or frustration in your law practice, chances are good that you need to set some boundaries in your practice or better boundaries in your practice. I'm going to share with you everything that you need to know so that you can, one, just know the areas of your practice where you need to be setting boundaries. Two, understand the mistakes that most lawyers make so that you're not making them when you're setting a boundary. And three, I'm going to tell you exactly what setting a boundary looks like. It's very precise, and most people skip the most important step in creating a boundary, which is why they continue to feel frustrated and resentful of different people in their practice and different circumstances that are happening to them. So let's get started, shall we? I'm Dina Cataldo. I am a life coach and a business coach for lawyers, and I am here to help you take charge of your practice, to really feel like you have more power inside of your practice. For a really long time, I didn't feel like I had power in my practice. I was a criminal prosecutor for over 15 years. And until I learned the skills that I teach lawyers in my podcast, To Be a Better Lawyer podcast, in my one-on-one coaching practice, and in Timepiece for Lawyers, then I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the poise. I didn't have the ability to really feel secure in my position as a lawyer who was doing a good job. And I knew I was great at what I was doing. I was a great lawyer. I could do the work. I was smart. I would work hard. But when it came to managing my time and it came to managing my emotions in my practice, I noticed I had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. And those highs and lows, I couldn't figure out, why am I feeling these high highs and these low lows? And part of it was because I wasn't being really clear with myself or with the people around me about what I wanted. And it created a lot of frustration, a lot of resentment. And I'm going to share my story, and I'm going to share stories from other lawyers that I've worked with who have experienced these same things. So first of all, I didn't even know what a boundary was when I was a lawyer. I don't even think I might have heard the word, but I never really thought about it. But what I see most lawyers doing when they think that they are setting a boundary is they're passive aggressive about boundaries, which I was, or you repeat yourself over and over and over again. And you think you're setting a boundary, you're telling someone your expectations. And then another way that I thought I was setting a boundary was by saying the boundary louder, as if I yelled or snapped, that somehow the person on the other end of that would understand what I wanted. None of those are creating boundaries, by the way. I will share with you what a real boundary looks like. So, when what most lawyers do, and I have seen this with my clients, is they'll tell me, look, I've told my assistants a million times, I want documents prepared this way. I've told my receptionist a million times, I don't want them to interrupt me during meetings. I've told my coworker a million times, don't walk into my office when I'm in the middle of work. Like, do something else, like email me, let me know what you want to come and talk to me about, and sure, I can make time for you, but if you do this, I don't like it. And they think that that's setting a boundary. The problem with that is that does not fulfill the requirements of a boundary. And I'm going to tell you what those requirements are in just a minute. For now, I just want you to recognize, are you doing any of those things? Are you repeating yourself over and over again, expecting that people are going to behave differently in your life? Are you getting upset at people for not behaving the way that you want them to behave? Or are you telling somebody to do something and they're just not doing it and you're getting frustrated because they're not behaving that way? Just check in. Do you notice those things? And this is going to give you an idea of where you need to be setting better boundaries, which I'm going to tell you how to do, or where you might need to set any kind of boundary. So if you're feeling frustration, if you're feeling anger, if you're feeling annoyed, chances are good you need to set a boundary or a better boundary, a more clear boundary. So, when you start to notice yourself doing things like being passive aggressive too, this is something to take note of. It's those little things that you say. And I used to do it too. So there's no judgment here. Like, some people have to work around here. Those kinds of things where you're just like trying to get your point across. Like, I need some quiet here. I need you to stop barging into my office, but you're not actually telling them what you want. You're just saying things in a very passive aggressive way to try to get your point across. That is not a boundary, but it is a sign that you're frustrated. It's a sign that maybe you have some resentment or anger. And so, in that particular area of your life, let's look at what a boundary might look like. Now, I want to use the example of a coworker, maybe this is an assistant for you, whoever it is coming into your office at any time that they feel like it. And oftentimes you're in the middle of something. You're in the middle of working, you're in the middle of a phone call, whatever it might be. Even like your lunchtime, you just want to have some alone time. I want to use that example because it's going to make it very clear what a boundary is and isn't. So let's say you have this situation coming up for you, then you start feeling resentment and anger. Good sign that you need a boundary here. If you don't feel angry about this, if it doesn't bother you, you don't need a boundary. It's fine. But if you don't like it, if it's something that annoys you, then let's look at creating a boundary in this particular relationship. The second thing that I want to bring up here is in this relationship with your coworker, you want to really look at what do I want them to do? Just ask yourself that question. What is it that I really want? How do I want them to behave? It doesn't mean that you're going to get what you want, but that doesn't matter because a boundary doesn't require anything of the other person. What it really requires is self awareness on your part, self awareness of what do I even want from this person? What do I want my day to look like? Why do I feel so frustrated? We've got to create awareness around that first before you can even set a boundary. So that piece is something to be aware of, to pay attention to. What is it that you even want? Do you not want them coming into your office at all? Do you want them to email you before they come into your office to check in to make sure that you're not in the middle of something? Do you want something else, a phone call? Do you want to meet up somewhere at a certain time? Like, what is it exactly that you want? Because if you don't have this information, if you don't have that awareness, then you can't create a boundary. Now, what exactly is a boundary? A boundary is not you telling someone what to do. A boundary isn't about the other person. A boundary is about what you will do if the other person does not behave the way that you want them to. This isn't about controlling the other person. In fact, if you're coming from a manipulative perspective, if you're coming from anger, if you're coming from resentment, when you set a boundary, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to communicate properly with them. You actually have to be in a very neutral state, meaning you understand their perspective. They don't actually know what you want because you haven't communicated it to them. Or it could be, and I find this a lot of times, that you have confused the person that you want to set a boundary with because you have not honored the boundary. You have let them behave how they want to behave without saying anything about it on certain occasions. And so that has created confusion in the boundary. Work with this a lot with lawyers. I've done this in my timepiece program and one-on-one coaching. And what they will tell me, my lawyers, they will tell me they set a boundary and I start asking them questions and it turns out they haven't been honoring the boundary. They haven't been doing the most important step. And I'm going to share what that most important step is in just a second. And it has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with you. So you found the thing that's resentful or creating anger in your life, right? You found the thing, the person, you understand what the problem is. You know what you want to happen. You know that you want peace and quiet during your lunch hour. You know you don't want anyone interrupting you when you're working. And then You communicate it to that person, but not just what it is that you want, but what you will do if they continue to behave in that manner. So, for instance, going back to the example of the coworker who just walks in at any time, you can say, "Look, Megan, I like talking to you, but I can't talk to you when I'm in the middle of work. I'm trying to get work done. But if you can email me before you come in and just make sure that it's a good time for me before you come in, that would go a long way in me being able to talk to you and give you my full attention. If you don't email me, I'm not going to be able to talk to you. In fact, I'm probably going to tell you to please leave." And that is actually, I could make that even more clear. And I could say, "Megan, I love you, girl. I want to talk to you. But when you just walk into my office, I can't get any work done. And I need to get work done. So, what I would like is that you email me or you call me before you come into my office to make sure that I'm not in the middle of anything. And if you don't do that, then I'm gonna have to say, 'Hey, Megan, I can't talk to you,' and I'll kick you out of my office." Now, I could say that in my personality, and I think it comes across okay. I feel pretty good about it. I don't have a problem with that. A lot of people are uncomfortable setting boundaries because they are afraid of what the other person is going to think. So it requires it that makes this third part actually following through with what you say you're going to do if they don't behave the way that you want them to really difficult because you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're going to worry that they're not going to like you. And then you aren't going to follow through with the third part, which is the part that creates the boundary. Because if you don't follow through with that final part of the boundary, you don't have a boundary. You have nothing except, "Oh, I told them I didn't want them coming in unless they emailed me." That's not a boundary. They could just keep coming in. And when Megan keeps coming in and you just keep letting her sit down and take all your time, there's no boundary there. And then you might get upset with Megan because she keeps coming in and she's not emailing you. But that's because you aren't complying with the boundary. You actually have to be the one to follow through and say, "Hey, Megan, I need you to email me. I'm in the middle of something. Can you please leave?" And yeah, you're going to feel uncomfortable, but that's how you train people to behave the way that you need them to in order for you to get work done. I had this come up with a attorney who had an assistant who would come in constantly and ask questions. Turned out he would just leave his door open and told his assistant, "Yeah, okay." It didn't even say it to her. The assistant just walked in all the time because it became a habit. What he needed to do was say, "Hey, Mary, I need you to bring all of your questions to meetings or talk to me when I'm out in the hallway. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to answer your question because I'm in the middle of work." And so, what he needed to practice doing was when Mary, because Mary's in the habit of going into his office and asking questions, when Mary comes in, M my client has to say, "Mary, I can't talk to you right now. Bring it to the meeting." Right? He actually has to stop himself from answering her question. Or, "Mary, can you email me and I'll get back to you on it?" Like, "Mary, I can't talk to you right now." He has to be the one who follows through on the boundary so that Mary learns that she can't just walk into his office and ask questions. And this can take time because you might have assistants, you might have colleagues who are very used to you having lax boundaries. You haven't really communicated these boundaries, and nor have you followed through on your boundaries. And if you have followed through on your boundaries, it's been very mixed bag. In other words, sometimes you'll enforce your boundaries, and sometimes you'll tell Megan, "Hey, I can't talk to you right now. You'll have to leave." Sometimes you let Megan come in and chit chat with you, even though she hasn't emailed you to find out if it's a good time. So if you're not really enforcing the boundary all the time, you don't have a boundary. You just have a request. You just have a hope that maybe they're going to follow through with what you want them to do. But a boundary is dependent upon you and how you want to show up in that relationship. And if you don't have boundaries and you're feeling resentment and you're feeling anger, you're just going to continue to feel resentment and anger and frustration until you begin setting and following through with those boundaries. So let's look at those pieces again. Okay. Let's look at all of these pieces one at a time to make sure that you've got a full boundary. The first step is to know that you need a boundary, and you know you likely need a boundary if you're feeling resentful, you're feeling angry, or you're feeling frustrated and annoyed at something that's going on with somebody in your life, whether it's an assistant, a colleague, it could be your mother-in-law. That's the first step, is just noticing what you feel that frustration in. The second step is then asking yourself, what do I want? What do I want this relationship to look like? How would I like this other person to behave? Am I okay if this other person simply doesn't behave the way that I want them to behave? The reason that question is important to ask is because you can't control the other person. You can only control you. Excuse me. You can only control what you do in the relationship. And then when you are decisive about what it is you want that relationship to look like, then you communicate it in a calm, kind way to the person you want to talk to. Megan, I can't have you coming into my office all the time because I'm really trying to get some work done. But if you email me and check in with me and I'm okay with it, then you can come in. But if you don't email me and you walk in, I'm going to have to kick you out because I got to get work done. And then once you've communicated that to them, and let's say Megan comes into your office without checking with you via email, you actually have to say, "Hey, Megan, I can't talk to you. I am going to have to ask you to leave." Because that boundary isn't about how Megan behaves, it's how you behave. You might communicate to Megan what you want, that I would like you to email me before you come in. If you don't email me before you come into my office, I'm going to have to send you away. And then it's up to you to follow through on making that reality. The boundary is about how you behave. It's not about how the other person behaves. Same thing with a mother-in-law, right? If you have a mother-in-law who's coming over to your house, she's knocking at your door any time of day, and you say, "Mother-in-law, I can't have you coming over to my house all the time. I've got a lot going on here. And if you want to come over, that's beautiful, but call ahead of time and I'll let you know if it's okay. But if you just show up out of nowhere, I'm going to have to tell you to leave." And then you start making it a requirement that she calls ahead of time. And then if she shows up at your doorstep and she hasn't called you, then you need to tell her, "No, I'm not going to answer the door. I told you before that you needed to call ahead of time to make sure it was okay." And even if you can look at your current circumstances and say, "Oh, it's okay if I let my mother-in-law in. It's fine." You've still got to send her away. That is key. You have to be in integrity with your boundary, because if she gets this wishy-washy, "Oh, sometimes I don't have to call and I can just show up and she lets me in," then she is just going to come over and you don't have a boundary. Now you just had a request. Same thing with Megan, right? The colleague who comes into your office and just sits down and starts talking. If you let her come in when she hasn't emailed you ahead of time to make sure that it's a good time for you, then you've got to send her away, because you've got to start training them to behave in accordance with what you want too. Otherwise, you're just going to feel resentment. You're just going to feel anger, the annoyance, the frustration. So, those are the keys to creating a boundary. And that is just one of the skills that we are going to practice and that we are going to get into it in coaching with in Timepiece for Lawyers. So, if you want to really master how you use your time, how you direct people, how you create boundaries and stick to those boundaries so that you feel more in charge of your practice, you feel more in control of your life, I highly encourage you to join me for Timepiece for Lawyers. It is a 16-week program where you and I work together in group to ensure that you have everything that you need to take charge of your practice. You're going to learn the skills to manage your time week to week, manage your time so that you're not constantly putting out fires, and that you're able to handle any real emergencies with poise and grace. You are going to be able to set a boundary beautifully and follow through with it. You are going to be able to have the keys to creating the life that you want within your practice. And I learned these tools over years of being a trial attorney, of creating a business on top of that practice, and really starting to learn how to manage my time effectively so I wasn't burning out, I wasn't killing myself, and I was being the most effective attorney and person within my business as I could possibly be. And this is going to change everything for you if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed out, if you're feeling anxious and pressured in your practice to get things done, but you find yourself not performing the way that you want to, not getting done as much as you would like. This is going to help you do that. It's going to help you manage your mind, manage your time, and take charge of your practice. You can join me for Timepiece for Lawyers now and get everything that I just mentioned and so much more. It's all on the website. You can go to dinacataldo.com/timepiece, PEACE. That's dinacataldo.com/timepiece. And you can get a total overview of the program, everything that you're going to get inside, all of the bonuses. There are some amazing bonuses in there. And right now, when you join, you're going to get all the replays from all of the other sessions that I've done in prior timepiece sessions. So you are going to have so much good stuff in there before we even get started the first week of May. And it's going to be amazing. It just keeps getting better and better. And if you have any questions, you can email me, dina@dinacataldo.com. But go to the website, everything's up there, and then join me because we're going to get started and we are going to start getting to work changing how you take charge of your practice. All right, my friend, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. Bye.